The cross-gendered leisure project I participated in was a construction project building a grape arbor. Different forms of construction have been around for centuries. We started out building huts and shelters with our hands or simple tools. During the Bronze Age, a class of professional craftsmen like bricklayers and carpenters came to be, and since then we have fused technology and human intellect together to create monumental structures through construction. Pages 29 and 30 of our class reading Both Gains and Gaps states, "The way in which women grew into a consciousness of their own is ignored. For example, during World War II, women were heavily involved in supporting the war effort through their work in manufacturing war materials in several countries. The capabilities of women in the labor market were largely ignored when the United States, for example, returned to a peacetime economy and women were relegated to the home. Thus, the contribution of women was defined by what the patriarchal society needed at that particular time. Instead of this time being the breakthrough for women to show everyone that they really can work effectively in traditional male-dominated fields, they were basically just given a pat on the back and a small thank you, but immediately were expected to assume their original role in the home." Pages 31 and 32 of Both Gains and Gaps states, "During the Victorian era, physical activities connotated vigor, while the ideal woman was supposed to be delicate. Leisure that occurred outside the home and allowed for expression of emotions also conflicted with the ideal woman's propriety, modesty, and circumspectness. The traits of passiveness, obedience to husband, circumspectness of behavior, and most of all attractiveness were deemed necessary to maintain the Victorian image of womanhood. By avoiding exercise and cultivating a pale face and an incapacity to do work, a woman gave the appearance of gentility. To have facial color and muscular strength was a sign of having to work for a living." Here's a chart by the National Association of Women in Construction. As of December 31st, 2011, an average of 828,000 women were employed in various occupation sectors of the construction industry. These numbers show the amount of women in the construction industry since 2005. In 2011, women made up about 9% of the construction industry in the United States. Here, various sectors of the construction industry are broken down for women. 74% of women in the construction industry work sales and office jobs. 13% work in professional and management sectors. 2% work in natural resources, construction, and maintenance. 20% work in service occupations, and 3% work in transportation and material moving. I have two theories as to why there have been little historical changes in women's participation in construction. First of all, no matter how you look at it, construction is a strenuous activity that requires strength. Naturally, men have more physical strength than women, so it makes sense for more men to be in a field of work that requires such strength. Another theory for why there have been little historical changes in women's participation in construction is because women are afraid of being stigmatized as masculine or lesbian. Page 60 of our class text, Both Gains and Gaps, states, "To step beyond these ascribed gender roles often resulted in a woman being labeled as masculine, therefore a lesbian and deviant. This accusation was threatening to many women who did not want the stigma to interfere with the rest of their lives. Thus, homophobic attitudes and the fear of being accused of being masculine deterred some girls and women from active pursuits, especially sports." Here are a few pictures of me during the beginning stages of building the grape arbor. Measuring, leveling, hammering, digging, screwing, and sawing are just a few things I helped with during this process. Construction fits into the traditional ideals of leisure for men because many guys like to tinker. Rebuilding car engines, fixing computers, and building model planes, cars, and trains are examples of male-dominated hobbies that involve tinkering. Another way construction fits into the traditional ideals of leisure for men is because it can be an outdoor activity. Barbecuing, sports, hunting, golfing, fishing, and boating are examples of other outdoor activities that are typically male-dominated. This cross-gendered leisure project relates to the class in multiple ways. There are three main goals of feminism. One main goal particularly relates to this project. Every woman has the right to equity, dignity, and freedom of choice through the power to control her own life and body within and outside the home. An example found on page 74 of both Gains and Gaps would be women who choose to pursue leisure experiences such as bodybuilding, rock climbing, and rugby playing without having to confront the traditional expectations around femininity or gender identity. Page 91 of both Gains and Gaps also talks about identities. Waring offered an example of how men differ from women based on identity. Male identity is generally linked to physical strength. Women are excluded from male activities like sporting activities that require physical strength. Females are supposed to support males, and females may resist these traditional identities and develop alternative identification. This project also relates to class materials because, as it says on page 66 in both Gains and Gaps, women's athletic freedom, and in this case construction participation, requires that certain attributes long defined as masculine, such as skill, strength, speed, physical dominance, uninhibited use of space and motion, become human qualities, not those of a particular gender. If we were able to stop ascribing particular skills to the different genders, we could equal out participation by men and women in all hobbies and activities. I've never participated in a construction project like this before because I've never really needed to. Normally, if there's a project that needs to be done around my house, either my mom takes care of it or my parents pay someone to do it. I wouldn't necessarily say that the reason I've never participated in this is because of any restraints I felt on women participating in construction, because my whole life I grew up with my mother being Mrs. Fix-It while my dad was away at work. About 10 years ago, we renovated my entire house, and my mom was the one who was basically calling the shots. She knew exactly how she wanted everything and was heavily involved in making sure everything was done correctly. This activity challenged me mentally and physically. Mentally, because I had to learn how to use tools I have never had to use before, and assisting with measurement calculations. I was challenged physically because of the heavy lifting involved. I was responsible for moving the wood from the delivery pallet in the front yard to the backyard. Although the work was tiring, I felt empowered and proud of myself for being able to keep up and do the work the way it was meant to be done. Doing this project made me realize how incredibly capable all women are in doing construction. Many women doubt themselves, thinking that construction is a man's job because it involves physical strength. It was tough work, but very rewarding in the end. When I typed in women in construction on YouTube, I was surprised by how many videos came up. One channel of videos in particular caught my attention. It was called Women Building Futures. This video introduced numerous women in Canada who work in various fields of construction. It was inspiring to me because they seemed very happy in their line of work and did not seem to let society's ideas of who really should be working in construction stop them from working in that field. I would absolutely participate in a construction project again. A quote I found on Wikipedia states, "Architecture and construction involves creating awesome structures that can show the beauty and creativity of the human intellect." That is the end of my slideshow, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation.